Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about the different levels of measurement of a variable. So in addition to having where variables can be classified as qualitative and quantitative, or discrete or continuous, we also have different levels of measurement of a variable. All right. And remember that discrete and continuous variables only apply to your quantitative variables. So the first level that we're going to start with is the nominal level, and nominal just means that you are categorizing the variable, all right? So you can categorize the variable by labeling it or naming it, something of that level. All that variable is doing is just basically putting the information into a category. So for instance, blood type. So if you were to collect blood types of individuals, it's basically just collecting your blood type A or your blood type O, and it's putting it in a category. So that is what we call nominal level. That's the most basic level of your measurements. Then we have ordinal level. Ordinal level means it's nominal level, so it classifies the data, but then it also can be ranked in order. So if you think about blood type, or if you think about the eye color, those can't be ranked in order. So if you rank them in order, it doesn't mean anything, or how would you even rank them? So the ranking doesn't have a meaning, so those are strictly nominal. But if it's nominal and it can be ranked, then it's considered ordinal. So for example, socioeconomic status. So you could have low class, middle class, high class. You can rank those. So it classifies the individual, but it also allows for a ranking system. You can rank it from low to high. You can rank it from high to low based on the amount of money or household income of those families. All right. Also, we call these Likert scales, but they're satisfaction ratings. I do these a lot at Chick-fil-A. If you go to Chick-fil-A, they give you a free sandwich if you fill out their surveys. So these are usually done on surveys, and that's what I was saying. I do those a lot, but you can usually rank like the level of service, whether you extremely disliked it, you were neutral about it, you liked it, or you extremely liked it. Sometimes it's called you were satisfied or extremely satisfied, or termed in that way. But those are called Likert scales, and what they do is they put it in a category, but it also allows for a ranking. You have the lowest, which is extremely disliked, to the highest, which is extremely liked. So those are examples of ordinal level data. Okay, that means it can be classified and it can be ranked. Then you have interval level, and this is usually dealing with numbers. Okay, interval level data, it has the properties of ordinal level, so it puts it in a group. It can be ranked, but also the difference in the values, meaning you can subtract the values and they actually mean something. Okay, so if you can subtract the values, so these are numbers, it has to be numerical. If you can subtract the values and it has a meaning, then it's considered interval. And one of the key things about interval data is that a value of 0 does not mean that there's an absence of the quantity. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But a value of 0 does not mean that there's an absence of a quantity. Here are some examples. Temperatures. So think about temperatures. If it's 70 degrees in Houston and it's 30 degrees in Chicago, if we were to subtract those two numbers, 70 minus 30 is 40, that actually has a meaning. It's 40 degrees colder in Chicago, or you could say it's 40 degrees hotter or warmer in Houston. So when you take those numbers and you subtract them, you actually have a meaning. So that's what it means for differences of the values of the variable to have meaning. Also, if you think about 0 degrees, that doesn't mean that there isn't a temperature. That means that it's 0 degrees. That's the level of degrees that it is in, say, Colorado. But 0 does not mean an absence of the quantity, okay? And that's important because that is how you're going to decipher between the interval level and this next level, which is, I'm going the wrong way, ratio level, okay? Ratio level is also dealing with numbers. It has all the properties of the interval level, but also the ratios of the values have a meaning. So when you divide the two values, that has a meaning, all right? And so the value of 0 with the ratio level does mean an absence of quantity. So this is how you're going to decipher between whether it's an interval level data or ratio level data. If the value of 0 does mean the absence of a quantity, then it's ratio level. If the value of 0 does not mean the absence of a quantity, then it's interval level, okay? So think about these examples, money. So if I take $10 and divide it by $2, I mean I'm taking 10, I'm breaking it into groups of $2. That means I have 5 groups that actually has a meaning, okay? So if I take those values and I divide it, it has a meaning, it's ratio level, alrighty? Versus if I took temperatures and divided them, it doesn't have a meaning. Also, weight is an example. Taking your weight is an example of ratio level data. Now think about this. If I have $0, that does mean the absence of money. If I have $0, I have no money. So 0 means the absence of the quantity. If I have 0 weight, I'm not a person, right? I don't weigh anything. How is that possible unless I'm not on Earth, right? So absence of 0 means absence of quantity, means it's ratio level data, all right? So these are our 4 levels: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. The first 2 levels are qualitative data. They're only categorizing, and the difference between the ordinal is that you can actually rank your categories. And then these last 2, interval and ratio, those are dealing with numbers, which are quantitative, okay? So these last 2 levels are quantitative. So here's an example. We want to determine the level of measurement for each of the variables, okay? So starting with gender. If you think about gender, you could be male or female. And so what is that doing? That is strictly categorizing the data. Can you rank those? No. Some people might want to rank them and say male is higher than the female, and some people may want to say female is higher than male, but there is no way to rank those. So that would be strictly nominal data. All right. SAT score. So think about those. Those are numbers. Okay. Those are numbers, and if you were to subtract the numbers from the SAT score, it means something. So if somebody scored a 1400 and somebody scored a 1200, the difference is 200. That means something. The first person scored 200 points higher. So it's interval, right? But now think about 0. If you have an SAT score of 0, does that mean that you don't have an SAT score? Or does that mean that you do have an SAT score? So think about that. So if you have an SAT score of 0, it doesn't mean that you don't have an SAT score. It just means you scored 0. So it doesn't mean the absence of the quantity. So in this case, that doesn't mean the absence of an SAT score. 0 doesn't. So in this case, SAT score is interval data. So the way you decipher between interval and ratio is to determine whether the 0 means the absence of that thing or not. 0 in this case does not mean the absence of an SAT score. It just means that's your score. Number of days a student worked out last week. So a student could have worked 7 days in a week. So they could have worked out 0 days, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 6 days, or 7 days. They could have worked out every day. And so those are numbers. It's putting it in the category. So remember, your qualitative data could also be numbers. So is that strictly just putting it in the categories? When you subtract those, does it mean, if it was strictly just put in the categories, it would be ordinal, right? So then you want to ask yourself, when you subtract those numbers, do they mean anything? So if one student studied 5 days and one student studied 2 days, if I subtracted those, you would get 3. That means something. That means one student studied 3 days more, one student studied 3 days less, okay? So that takes it into the next level of interval, all right? Then the next thing you want to ask yourself is, what does 0 mean? Does 0 means the absence of a quantity? Does 0 means the absence of studying? Or does 0 does not mean the absence, right? So if you have a 0, that means you did not study. So that is the absence of the thing that we're measuring, student studying. So in this case, this would be ratio data. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'm not just rambling. But you want to look at the 0. If a 0 means the absence of what you're studying, then it is ratio data. If 0 does not mean the absence of it, it's interval data. So with SAT scores, a score of 0 does not mean you didn't take your SAT. It just means you got a 0. In this case, if you have 0 days that you studied, that means the absence of it. You did not study at all. So that's ratio data. So that's how you determine the difference between the two. A letter grade. So letter grades are A, B, C, D, E. So these are putting you in the categories. And in this case, your categories can be ranked. All right. So in this case, this will be ordinal data. And these aren't numbers. These are letters. So it would have to be one of the first two levels, either nominal or ordinal. And in this case, it will be ordinal because you can rank those categories. All right. So hopefully this made sense. These are your 4 different levels of measurement for variables. I'll go back to them really quick. Nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Remember, the first 2 levels are qualitative data. The last 2 are quantitative data. All right. So on your homework, there will be some examples like the one we just did where you have to decide whether it is nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. Remember, with nominal or ordinal, the question you want to ask yourself is, can you rank the categories? If you can rank the categories, it is ordinal. If you can't rank the categories, it is nominal. With interval and ratio, you want to ask yourself, does 0 means the absence of the quantity, or does it not mean? If it does not mean the absence of the quantity, then that will be interval. If it does mean the absence of whatever it is you're studying, that will be ratio level data. All right. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments below, and I will respond as soon as I get a chance. Y'all have a great day. See you in the next video.